Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. We have had a wonderful meal of salad and chicken. I wanted to make sure we got a chance to recognize the wonderful students who are behind the delicious meals we've had tonight. So I'd like to welcome out Chef Randolph and all the culinary arts students to come out. And these folks have been working since the afternoon. Thank you all. It was delicious, right? So thank you very much. And as noted, dessert will be coming to you as we speak. Speak we will, as we embark on part 2 of our series, How is Arlington Impacted by Changes in Federal Immigration Policy and Enforcement? Just before we begin, I'd like to recognize one of our Arlington elected officials who has joined us in the back, County Board Member Katie Crystal. As I said at the start of our September program, the topic of immigration enforcement is hot and very contentious these days. And 2 months later, I don't believe that statement is any less true. The Trump administration has changed immigration enforcement priorities from those of the prior administration. There have been questions of manner and style of that enforcement. Many of them remain unsettled. And the political environment, which I believe is well described as heated, actually has a habit of clouding the understanding of how this is going to happen and how it's going to play out. Communities are still thinking about how they react to that. 2 months ago, we looked at how that impacts our public sector. We had officials from Arlington Public Schools and our sheriff's office talk about how federal policy changes are forcing them to think and react on the local level, and noting that in many respects, they are takers of those policy changes. They don't have the chance to tell the federal government what to do. They have to react and make sure they're following their requirements under Virginia law. But it's not just the government that has to react. Our community does too. How we relate to each other, how we provide services to each other, all happen under that same backdrop. And so what we wanted to do was invite several community organizations to come and to talk about how this is impacting them. How are the changes observed from the viewpoint of their missions? What are they seeing from the people they serve, from their staff, from their membership? And how is it impacting Arlington as a whole? And we want to cover a range of organizations because this is a topic whose effect is being felt very far. And so we've invited one organization that works specifically with undocumented immigrants, one focused a lot on refugee support, and one organization that doesn't have immigration per se as part of their mandate, but works with many immigrant families and therefore is feeling the impact too. Before introducing our speakers, I want to reiterate a point that we made at the start of our September meeting. And our program for this evening is not a pro-con debate on federal immigration enforcement changes, should they be happening or not. There have been, and I'm sure will continue to be, many programs to that effect, put on by wonderful organizations, and I encourage you to take them in. But Committee 100 will look through the lens of community response. And in this sense, much as our community organizations will do, we'll be treating the federal enforcement change as a given and discussing how we approach that as a backdrop, and again, consistent with Committee 100 as a nonpartisan, non-aligned organization. So to introduce our 3 speakers before inviting them up to speak, we'll first hear from Dr. Amabiola Sanchez, who is the founder and chair of the DREAM Project. The DREAM Project's mission is to empower students whose immigration status creates barriers to education by working with them to access and succeed in college through scholarships, mentoring, family engagement, and advocacy. I think Emma is best known to many of us from her service as a member of the Arlington School Board from 2009 to 2016. She also represented Arlington on the Nova Community College Board, was responsible for initiating Project Family, the bilingual GED, and various programs to benefit the Latino community. And in looking at the number of community service awards she has received, if I were to list them, we'd be here all night, so there are many. After Emma speaks, we'll welcome Bethlehem Desta, the Senior Program and Grant Manager for the Ethiopian Community Development Council. ECDC, as it is fondly known, was established in 1983 to respond to the needs of the growing Ethiopian community here in the DC metro area and around the country. Since its founding, it has worked with people from all over the world, and it continues to develop programs that respond to the needs of newcomers to the country and increase awareness about refugee and newcomer issues at home and abroad. Bethlehem has been with the ECDC since 2013, becoming a senior project manager last year. And finally, reflecting organizations that do not have an immigration mission per se, but who do work with immigrants, we welcome Charles Meng, Executive Director and CEO of the Arlington Food Assistance Center, and a gentleman who I think needs no introduction in many Arlington circles. But AFAC is a community-based nonprofit that provides supplemental groceries to Arlington neighbors in need. It currently distributes groceries to nearly 2,200 families every week. And over a third of the people they serve are children. Charlie joined the staff at AFAC in 2008 as Director of Operations. Prior to that, a long career, including roles at Georgetown University, the Kennedy Center, American University, and the DC government. So we're fortunate to have much talent and much insight in the room with us. And so I will therefore invite Dr. Viola Sanchez to come and join us to begin the program. Thank you.
Good evening, buenas noches. It's great to be among friends, and I am delighted to represent the DREAM Project. I just want to introduce to you two people that are very important part of the DREAM Project. Lisette Arias. Lisette is a DREAM Project board member. She's one of the founders of the DREAM Project, graduated valedictorian from Wakefield High School, came to the United States 2 months old, and she is a DACA recipient, and she has graduated with honors from Moravian College. Lisette Uria, it's another Lisette, who is also the project executive director. She's also a former DACA recipient, graduated from VCU. And I also want to let you know that Brian Marroquin, who I met when he was at Barrett Elementary School, when he graduated from high school at Washington Lee. At that time, they were denying admission to students who were not permanent residents and U.S. citizen. Brian was part of an effort with MALDEF, the Mexican-American Legal Defense Fund, to file a suit. And thanks to his suit, he was able to be admitted to Virginia Tech, and also the admission was open to Northern Virginia Community College and to George Mason University for Dreamers. So when we see these amazing contributing members of our community, and we think that they are the ones that really started, and like them, we have many more. And also, I want to recognize Gaston Arauz, who was also the former chair of the DREAM Project and an advocate, and many of our donors who are here. Thank you very much. So, as an immigrant myself, I really believe that the United States has been and is a nation of immigrants, a land of opportunity where newcomers can, through hard work and perseverance, achieve better lives to themselves and their families. But in today's world, realizing the American dream is now almost impossible, especially for our undocumented youth, our dreamers. Each year, 65,000 undocumented students who have grown up in the United States graduate from high school with little means to participate in American society. Today, we have approximately 750,000 to 1,800,000 deferred action for childhood arrivals, young immigrants who, on September 5th, heard the terrible news that DACA was rescinded. Therefore, their status after March 5th is in limbo, depending on when their DACA permit expires. When I immigrated as an adolescent to Virginia, working as a nanny, and I didn't have the immigration status either, but for me it was not a barrier in 1962 to pursue higher education. I was given a scholarship and I was allowed to work. I had a social security number, And here I am after all these years in the United States, contributing to this country and to this county. Now, why do I have a passion for the DREAM project? When you meet and you know them, you know a Brian, you know a Lisette, you know many of our students that are here, and when you realize that how that immigration status is creating a barrier, that's when we say, and when we decided back in 2010, Lisette Arias was one of them, graduate from Moravian College, who was unable to work. She came and she volunteered so that we could start the DREAM project with other families, including valedictorians from Yorktown High School, Washington Lee High School, who at that time, in 2010, there was another attorney general who sent a memo to the universities not to admit them, that undocumented students could not be admitted to state universities. Seeing the face of these students, we said we must do something. If we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem. And we started the DREAM project in my living room. Fast forward to now, we are serving over 100 DREAM scholars. We have 77 scholars in college. We have 45 mentoring high school students. We started with 4, and now we are at 77. Now, we know that this scholarship is only $1,250 and it's renewable. So we say, we know we will have to increase that amount, because what if DACA goes away, so that's in-state tuition? So what's the need? The need is that in Virginia there's 12,000 students currently that have DACA, and they are dreamers. And it's estimated that removing them from the workforce in Virginia, it would cost $711 million in GOP losses. This is an impact in our economy. What are we observing in this community? Since President Trump issued a ban on refugees, one of our DREAM scholars from Sudan, who had been waiting for asylum for 2 years. Suddenly, her work permit is expired, her mother loses her job, she is attending Marymount University. They are in a crisis. And when DACA was repealed on September the 5th, dreamers who came to the United States are children. They are seeing that the work permit, Social Security, temporary protection from deportation may go away. What can we say to Henry, who graduated valedictorian from Yorktown High School? He is mechanical engineer. He is working in DC. He bought a house for his family. How does Henry feel right now? Or to Jose, who graduated from the Arlington Mill High School. He was older, but he went to Nova. He has 3 children, and he bought a house in Prince George's County. He owns a business. That may go away. So, not only are we worried about DACA, we're worried about temporary protective status. Just on Tuesday, Secretary Tillerson sent a letter to acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary to inform her that the conditions in Central America and Haiti have been used to justify the protection for the temporary protective status no longer is necessary to renew that. What will happen to 200 temporary protective status? These are our families. Many of them have been here for 20 years. So, not only losing DACA. So, we know about economic loss. How many minutes do I have? 2. Okay. So, what do we know about DACA? The average age of arrival is 6.5 years old. 45% have a parent, sibling, spouse, or child who is a U.S. citizen. 91% are employed. 65% reported pursuing educational opportunities. What about Arlington? We know we don't know the immigration status in Arlington public schools, but what we know is that 31% of Arlington public schools are English language learners. Now we know that they come from immigrant families, and yet we know that 62% of those children are US citizens. So the impact on a family impacts the students. So what we need student support, staff training, we have worked with Voice, and Kathy Panfield is part of that. With the school system, we have a working group to see what we can say. And yes, we are all hoping for the DREAM Act. And yes, the DREAM Project is committed to fulfill our mission, and we need your support. We are a small nonprofit, but we are not going to stop supporting our students. Before DACA existed, we supported our dreamers. If DACA goes away, we will continue to support, but our parents, our community need greater understanding. These are resilient trailblazers, and my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Our second speaker from the Ethiopian Community Development Council, Bethlehem Desmond.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. It's very interesting, and it's a time where we need this conversation because it's affecting a lot of our communities. My name is Bethlehem Desta. I'm the Senior Program and Grant Manager for Ethiopian Community Development Council. ECDC is an ethnic-based organization established in 1983. A lot of people think that we only work with Ethiopians only, but the reality is not. We will work with all refugees that comes through the U.S. refugee admission programs. ECDC is one of the 9th resettlement agencies in the U.S. Our mission is to resettle refugees, promote cultural, educational, and socioeconomic development programs for the immigrant and refugee community in the U.S., and to conduct humanitarian and socioeconomic development programs in the Horn of Africa. ECDC builds capacity and empowers communities by providing refugee resettlement services, strengthening ethnic-based community organizations, engaging in public education and advocacy. Currently, we have 3 branch offices. We have an office here in Arlington, we have in Silver Spring, Maryland, we have in Denver, Colorado, Las Vegas, Nevada, and then we have 13 community-based organizations, affiliates around the US, who also do refugee resettlements. The service we provide are reception and placement, that is for the refugees that are newly coming, encompasses finding them affordable housing, employment, other assistance with integration, translation, interpretation, domestic violence prevention education, life skills trainings. Those are the programs that we provide service. As you know, a lot of changes are coming in the refugee resettlement programs. It all started in January 2017 when the first executive order came out. It suspends first the refugee resettlement program for 120 days, and it also capped the refugee admission to 50,000 from 110, which was set by the previous administration. So you can imagine what that means to the refugees and also to the refugee resettlement agencies. It prevents refugees coming from the 7 countries, and then it also affects internationally and locally. So when you talk about the international effects, it prevents all the refugee processing to stop. No travels were processed, and that makes it even harder for the refugees because all the clearance that they get is time sensitive. So if they don't travel within that period, then it will expire. They have to redo it. And on average, one refugee takes a refugee to come to the U.S. 18 to 24 months. So it adds more time for them to be processed. Locally, no arrival means it affects funding, which makes it difficult for the refugee resettlement agencies to maintain capacity. So some agencies are forced to close or to let go of their staff. So it also created fear and panic among refugees who are already in the US because they still have families back home that are waiting to come. And they don't understand what it means for them, even if they are here already, how that is translated to their status. So it created a lot of panic and it created a lot of fear. And then there was a revision to it. There was a lot of back and forth with the court system, and then there was a revision. And the revised travel ban is lifted the overall refugee admission suspension, but it bans 11 nationalities and stateless Palestinians by putting 90 days more adding screening, and they suspended for them to come. Among those countries, 6 of the nationalities constitute the bulk of the refugee communities that we resettle. Those are Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Syria. So those countries, people coming from those countries are put on another additional screening. So that means we won't be able to see those refugees coming in this fiscal year. And in the current fiscal year, the president determined the refugee site number to be 45. It capped it to 45,000. So with this additional suspension, the probability of us seeing that 45,000 is at a minimum, because with all these delays, it will affect how they can get here. Which also decreased the overall number each refugee agency receives. For example, for us and the previous fiscal year, for our Maryland office, we were projected 400 to resettle 400. For this year, after the cap, we are reduced to 250. So you can imagine with 250, I don't think we can reach even 200 with all these restrictions. So you can translate that, what it means to not only the refugees and their families, but to the staff, to the employees, and to the agencies. Because if we don't, they are also, it is associated with the funding that we get. So you can translate it, how it is affecting also the people who are here. These changes make it difficult for refugee resettlement agencies and other community-based organizations providing service to these communities to maintain capacities and affect the growth of the programs. So ultimately, our goal is to try to work with other state-based or counties or private donors and to maintain our capacity, because we hope that things will change and will continue to provide service to the refugees and their families. So if you have any other questions, I'll finish with that and I'll answer if you have any questions.
Thank you, Bethlehem. And our third speaker this evening from the Arlington Food Assistance Center, Charlie Mack.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everyone, for having me here. I see actually a lot of our supporters and a few of our own volunteers here tonight. So I want to say thanks to everyone who helps AFAC do what we do. And what do we do? Last month, October, we served 2,384 families in need. Who are those families? There are really three sets of folks we deal with. We deal with those that you think, the unemployed and the underemployed. We're seeing more of our unemployed families find employment, but they're finding employment at $7.25 an hour, which is minimum wage. The other, and actually the fastest growing population of ours, are the elderly living on fixed incomes here in Arlington County. They're house rich and cash poor. Things are just no longer adding up for them, and we're here to serve them. But that's a solid third of our families. The third group are the disabled in mind and in body. They're the silent people among us who walk and need help. In many ways, they're living on a Social Security income of probably something that maxes out at about $1,100 a month, and that's high. Among these families are many immigrants. Half of our families are Hispanic. Another 25% are African American, and the rest are Americans, native citizens. What we've seen recently is a growing fear in our immigrant communities. And I have to say, those communities do go beyond the Hispanic individuals. We have over 110 countries represented among our families, and we have found that we need to print everything at AFAC in 5 different languages: Spanish, Ethiopian, French, and Vietnamese. And some of it is actually done in Mongolian also, which is a growing population. So we don't really deal with families or their immigrant status. For us at AFAC, if you're hungry in Arlington, we're here to help, and that really doesn't matter your immigrant status. We do have a very complex referral process. All of our families have to be referred to AFAC. If they come to our doors, we will start a file for them and then send them up principally to the Department of Human Services. Those families include many Hispanic families, many families who are tied through their children to programs that are available at DHS. But on the other side, we have almost 600 families who are undocumented. Those are referred to us through the Shirlington Educational and Employment Center. Andres Tobar and his group really does a fantastic job referring families to us. That's really the only way that we know an individual's status. Our database, which is entered by social workers across the county, it's available to social workers at DHS, the public schools, and 20 other organizations that we partner with. That database is AFAC's database, and it does not contain immigrant status. And as a private database, I think it gives our families a lot of assurance that they're safe at AFAC. And that's what we try to communicate to all of our families. AFAC is here to help families in need. Your status does not matter. So that's really what we're seeing, a continued fear in the community. There has been a small movement of families out of DHS so that their names will not be in a government database into some of our partner agencies where we are seeing a growth in referrals. But the bottom line is, you're safe at AFAC. So I'll be happy to answer questions later and turn it back to Scott.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to all 3 of our speakers. And now I'd like to invite all 3 of our speakers to join me up here on the dais, where we're a nice raised platform here. Like to join us up, we'll begin the Q&A period. As everybody takes their seats, I'd like to reiterate once again that Committee 100 is a neutral and non-aligned organization dedicated to learning more about what's impacting our community. And as such, any questions, provided that they are related to the topic from any perspective or background, are in bounds. With that, do we have any questions? Yes.
Christine Gregory. Mr. Sanchez, does the Arlington Community Foundation give scholarships now to dreamers or people who want to be dreamers?
I think that the only scholarships that our students could apply are the ones that do not require the FAFSA, the federal assist, in order to qualify for financial need, as far as I remember, the Arlington Community Foundation required that they have to fill that form, the FAFSA form, and our Dreamers cannot fill that form. So I had tried to advocate for the Arlington Community Foundation to see if they could, like other organizations, find another way that these families could demonstrate their needs so that they could be eligible for the Arlington Community Foundation scholarship.
Hi, I'm Gail Dennis, and I know that in Baltimore, the Jewish community, German Jews, when the Russian Jews came here, took them in, taught them English, cultured them, because they didn't want to be discriminated against for having already established a good community there. Are you all doing any kind of that similar type of thing and vetting the immigrants as they come to you for services to ensure that you don't get a bad egg that gives everybody else a bad reputation?
Part of the refugee resettlement program is cultural orientation and also enrolling them to ESL classes. We also have other programs that help them to integrate with the communities. And we also have a First Friend program where we link them with volunteers who are from the local community so that they can be, it's like, we call it a First Friend. So it's kind of forced friend relationship, but it's reciprocal relationship where the local communities can learn about the culture of the newcomers, and also the newcomers can learn about the local communities.
With the DREAM project, I talked a lot about deferred action, which is DACA. DACA eligible people, they have to go through a criminal record, and all of them pass. So it's not like they're any bad eggs. Unfortunately, the rhetoric about who are the immigrants has been changed when they have been tied to especially Latino young males to be portrayed as gang members. And that, fortunately, we have seen the results of our election yesterday, and that type of propaganda did not affect, I think, many of our voters. But it is very painful for immigrants to have that portrayal constantly. It's almost like we have to develop a second skin so that it can bounce back those insults. And those insults have been part of the description when DACA was rescinded. I don't know if any of you heard our Attorney General talk about the students as he did. I literally was sick to my stomach. I was driving and I just couldn't believe that in a country like the United States, they could portray our deferred action students like our Attorney General did. So we have to constantly demonstrate that our students, that immigrants, that refugees are contributors to this society. And yes, in the Arlington public schools, in order for them to graduate, they have to be completely proficient in English. And our DREAM scholars, 85% have stayed in college, and we already have 24 that graduated, even though we just started in 2011.
I think for AFAC, we don't have a specific effort to check our clients. What we do is we try to get our clients into the system and let the system work on it and let the system provide for their needs. You know, the lack of food is only a symptom of something else. We see a lot of other domestic issues, housing issues, insurance issues. So we try to get our families up to DHS or to an agency where those issues can be dealt with. But our objective is to make sure that no one goes hungry in this community.
Is it possible or feasible or even within the realms of possibility that dreamers could be adopted to keep them in the U.S.?
Well, I do know that there have been dreamers that have been adopted. they came, many of them unaccompanied minors, and when they came, I know in Arlington, some that have been adopted, but that was when they came, as unaccompanied. Many of the dreamers have families, and and they are not, they do not want to get adopted. And part of their pain is when I talk with many of them, and when they are professionals, and the idea, some people say, well, they could move to Canada, or they can go to their own countries and be professionals. Yes, they can. But if their families are here, the family separation is very bad. And so once they leave the United States, because they have been out of status for some times, there is a 10-year penalty that they cannot come back to the United States. And so that's a problem with our undocumented families. They cannot leave the country, because if they leave, they cannot come back. But there have been children that have been adopted. Thank you.
My name is Max Scruggs. One of the three types of clients you described were the people who live in houses that are worth a lot of money, perhaps, and they're cash poor. They're cash poor because they choose to be so. They don't have to be cash poor, and they don't necessarily qualify for your help. If they have $1 million worth of house, they can turn a lot of that into cash. So isn't it a hurt to the other people to call these people poor?
We look in, as I mentioned earlier, we take referrals from a whole bunch of agencies that have reviewed the needs of these families, have documented to us, not because of their necessity, but they have documented income. And that's what we look at, and that's what the social workers look at. I don't make judgments about, and I'm sorry if I did make a judgment about individuals who do live in large houses, but still find that they cannot make ends meet. What we try to do at AFAC is to help those families make better decisions about what they put in their, on their tables and what they consume. A lot of our families, because of lack of available cash, because a lot of their cash is going to housing costs, real estate taxes, insurance, medical needs, and other things, they really don't have the cash in their pocket to buy food. And they often will go to some place like a McDonald's, eat off the dollar menu, and they're getting high sugar, high salt, and high fat. What we try to do at AFAC is to provide a healthy, nutritious menu of food that they can select so that they can save some money that can be used for other necessary expenses.
Well, people think I actually have a question, so I'm Scott Pedowitz. And my question is that one of the things we hear in the media portrayal a lot when it comes to accessing social services is that immigrants, even immigrants with legal status, are afraid to come out because they don't want to run afoul of the law accidentally or run afoul of some sort of trap. And so people are staying away from healthcare, social services, food services, and the like. So one, is that being borne out in reality? And if so, how prevalent is it? And I'm curious, what are your respective organizations doing to try to meet them where they feel comfortable being met?
Yes, nationally there has been documentation that immigrants have been refusing or not going to social services to renew, for example, their public assistance for their children. So if we have, for example, a family that they may be undocumented, but they have a U.S. citizen as a child, and that U.S. citizen could benefit from Medicaid or public assistance. And there has been trends in services to immigrant clients in Arlington that they have seen that decline. There is also evidence that when we have meetings with dream scholars in places that may not be schools or churches, we have very small participation. But within the DREAM project, because we have established very strong relationships with our students and their families, they feel very comfortable coming and meeting with us. But not necessarily many times going to other settings where they may be, for example, portrayed as maybe what if ICE comes. There is that fear, you have heard that, and even reading today in the Washington Post, when you read, you know, the editorial about that young girl with cerebral palsy in Texas, that because in that place they had ICE stops. And so the parents didn't accompany that child to have surgery. But ICE stopped them and he was outside the hospital waiting for that child, and then took that child away from 150 miles away from the parents. When we read those stories, families are afraid. And we are working with our parents in a training program, we call it Padres en Acción, where they meet here, for example, at the Career Center on Saturdays, and we have people from Department of Human Services coming, we have people we're going to have a policeman come, we're going to have other legal services come so that they can know how to complete, for example, if they're going to do a power of attorney. Now we are learning, though, through our working group with the school system, that even if a family has a power of attorney that leaves somebody with a relative, sometimes a power of attorney is not an acceptable document. So there's a lot of complexities, and so how to advise the families is quite complex, and all of them want to have more legal information, they want to know about their rights, but they also need support.
Every once in a while, we do get into some funny situations. There's a lot of fear among our families. There are a lot of Hispanic individuals, and they have a basic distrust. So the other day, when a group of agents from TSA came, many of our clients sort of scattered. And I sort of jumped up and said, what the hell are they doing here? And it turns out they had run a food drive for us. And they were delivering 2,000 pounds of food. And as soon as they left, all of our families came back. And that's a problem. You know, there is a basic fear in our community, and particularly among our Hispanic clients. So it is prevalent, and we have to understand that all that has happened in the last few years creates an atmosphere of fear among our families.
My name is John Quinn. I understand from our recent election that Virginia does not have any sanctuary cities or counties, presumably. But I draw the inference from what I'm hearing from you folks, as well as what I generally understand, that Arlington in particular is as welcoming to immigrants, regardless of status, as we can legally be in this federal environment. Is that inference a legitimate one? Is Arlington being as hospitable to people in need, regardless of their immigration status, as we can be?
I think that Arlington is friendly. I think the county board, the school board, the superintendent, they have all made assurances to our community that they will continue to support and to advocate, and I mean, I wouldn't say advocate, but, and of course, they have stayed away from the word sanctuary. Yes, it is very welcoming. I know that Katie Crystal here, she took an interest in this when we met with her and has a lot of information on the website. But like I told the superintendent and the school board, having things on the website doesn't necessarily communicate directly to the families. And so we have to make special efforts on how to do that. And we are working with the school system in several areas on how to meet the needs of students, families, and how to do staff training. It is very complex to have an in-depth understanding of the complexity of these issues and how they impact. Now, the school system, because of a Supreme Court decision, they have to admit students regardless of their immigration status. So immigration status is not an issue when it comes to the public schools. Once the students have to go to college, that's when those protections end. So in colleges, if you're going to enroll in a college, they do ask you not just for your residency, your domicile, and if you pay taxes or something like that, but actually for in-state tuition, you have to demonstrate that here you are a permanent resident, a US citizen, or for DACA recipients, they could demonstrate that they had been approved of temporary protected status. But if that goes away, like it's happening right now for our seniors in high school, that many of them could not apply for DACA after September 5th, then for new DACA recipients, so they will have to probably pay out-of-state tuition. Because even though they may have graduated from high school, paid our taxes, all of that, they would still probably be charged out-of-state tuition. And so that is a problem. At the universities, they do look at their status.
I think Arlington County is very welcoming for the immigrant population. Actually, we get funding from the county to provide employment services for immigrants living in the county, and we also help with immigration, filing for green cards, employment authorization, citizenship, and other applications. So that shows you how welcome it is.
Yes, I think Arlington is a very welcoming community. In fact, a number of years ago when some of the outlying suburbs and counties had made problems for immigrant families, we saw an increase in the number of families that were coming into the county and particularly coming to us for help. I only know that there are a number of social safety net agencies that I work with, that AFAC works with, all of whom strive to help whoever is in need in this community. So I think indeed it's a very welcoming community, and I have to say that with 2,000 volunteers and almost 8,000 donors, it is a very generous community when it comes to feeding the needy in this community.
Hi, I'm Catherine Scruggs. My question is for, you're talking about immigrants and refugees. Yeah. What about the people who are seeking political asylum, who got here maybe on a tourist visa or whatever, and they are in such a limbo that they really they shouldn't be talking to anybody unless they find a lawyer to talk to. Are there any services that they could get? Primarily, I think, like housing or food. They can't work until they're 5 months after they file for political amnesty.
Unfortunately, we get all the fundings through the state or the federal government, and unless they get their asylum, we cannot be able to provide them any services. So once they get approved, then they qualify to receive any services from us. Unfortunately, that is the reality.
But let's suppose they are Arlington residents. There are services, be it AFAC, nonprofit, as well as, we had a very good meeting with the chief of it's not chief, the director of human services, Anita Friedman. She met with our parents and she was really amazing, giving them very valuable information of what services they qualify as Arlington residents and what services they could not qualify, like food stamps or Medicaid, unless they have their citizenship or permanent residency. So I think it was very clear that in Arlington there are services that are provided because you are an Arlington resident versus, and they don't look at immigration status. But many families, they didn't know, and I actually didn't know many of those services that are available for Arlington residents, and they don't look at immigration status. The major problem that we're having right now is that people are afraid that whatever information they give, be it the local schools, the county, state, or even nonprofits, that this information could be used against them. And that's a fear. That's a real fear. So within the school system, we do assure them that information, that is provided to us, it's not going to be shared with ICE, but people are afraid.
I'll do two more if we keep it quick. Lucy, if you wait for the mic, please.
Wait for the mic,
Okay. I'm Lucy Allen. And do you know of any progress that's being made with the dreamers who were in the Obama pile, the ones that the president said he'd do something about? Do you know anything that's happening? Good
Well,
things?
the only thing that right now, there are some proposals for like the DREAM Act and others, but I don't know if they have actually been introduced yet. Some people, one of the concerns that I was just talking, and there has been a lot of lobbying for the DREAM Act at the federal level. But what the president said one time, that he supported DACA, not to be afraid, September 5th, was demonstrated on the contrary. And what I think is really significant, what's happening now, is before, under Obama or other presidents, they were going after people that had committed crime, right? That have committed crimes. But now, for the first time, we have like 800,000 students who were protected, who were, quote, legally being here, and whose that status was eliminated, and now the temporary protective status. So not only are we going after the millions that are undocumented, but also we are going after the ones that are very successful contributing members to our society. So that's, and banning refugees. So all those messages, clearly, it's, that the policies are very hurtful to the communities. And not only to the person who may be out of status, but to the total family, because we have a lot of US-born children that are living with undocumented parents.
We have time for one more. You got about 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Julio Hernandez, and I am the son of an undocumented mother. And when I was in high school, I didn't believe that I would be able to go to college. Right now, I'm working on my doctorate at Duke University. And it's something I'm very proud of. And tonight, there's going to be a kid that goes to bed hungry.
You have a question?
And yes. And there's a girl who I know who saved up money. She's undocumented, worked hard, had bought a brand new car, and was hit and rear-ended, but had to walk away. Couldn't go to the hospital. There's a mother right now who can't sleep at night because she's scared. What can we say to these children, to these mothers who are working hard but feel unsafe, but who love their home very much? You know, they love Arlington, they love the community. They go to church, they go to school, they contribute. They're on the sidewalk cleaning the streets because they want their community to be beautiful. My mom ended up serving in the community as a parent liaison, worked hard. So what are things that we can say to these families to create safety, to help them feel welcome and to feel loved?
We got about 2 minutes in aggregate.
At least what we say to our families and to our students is they are valuable, that we support them, and that we are going to be next to them to pursue, be it college education, graduation from high school, information. We are not going to, abandon them. So we have to build relationships with them. And I think that caring speaks through actions.
I think the one thing that we do at AFAC is to say that if you're a resident of Arlington County and are in need of food, we're here to help. And it doesn't really much matter your immigrant status. And that's simply the way we approach everything. So that's what I can say. If you need food, come to us.
What we say is we continue to advocate for them. We'll be their voice as much as we can. The other thing that I would want to let everybody know is if you really want to know more about the people that we serve and what we do, we are an open house tomorrow in our office at 903. Please stop by and see what we do and who we serve. And we also have, every year we host a Thanksgiving dinner. It's a community event open to everybody. Please stop by before you leave. I can give you a flyer. You bring a dish to share and you meet the people we serve. We call it an annual First Refugee Thanksgiving dinner, where we introduce our refugees to the American culture of Thanksgiving. So you would get a chance to meet people and hear their stories, because their stories speak louder than us sitting here and talking about them. Thank you.
December 9th is the Dream Project Holiday Dinner. Come.
Well, thank you, everyone. I apologize to the folks who still had hands up in the air, but we are at a time. Just hold your seats for a moment for a couple of announcements and thank yous. Somebody has lost an earring, so see Sharon at the end if that was you. Additionally, I want to make sure people are aware that our next program will be, we always meet on the second Wednesday of the month. That'll be the 13th of December. We'll be back at Marymount University where we usually meet. The topic for that program will be, should the name of Washington Lee High School be changed? And, of course, you can make reservations for it on our website, arlingtoncommittee100.org, and we will send out announcements for that. We look forward to seeing you there. That little bit of business announced, time to say the two most important words in the English language, which are thank you. First off, please join me in thanking our three speakers, Charlie Meng, Eva Viola Sanchez, and Bethlehem Desta. I would like to thank the Committee 100 Program Committee for organizing the program tonight. Ed Nolan and Pat Hope are the chairs of that. And Brian Markeen, who was referenced earlier, was very much the originator of this series going back to our last program year and carried it through. And thank you, Brian, for all your hard work on that. There's quite a bit behind the scenes. An extra special thank you as we are venturing out of our familiar home and really taking advantage of this wonderful space. Sharon Dorsey on our board of directors saw to all of the arrangements for tonight and being here. And thanks again to the culinary arts students and the faculty here. What an amazing meal we had, and they are still cleaning up and waving down the hall. And last but most importantly, thanks to all of you. Our Committee 100 programs would not be what they were without your attendance, your participation, your questions. And with that, I want to wish everybody a good evening, a wonderful Thanksgiving later this month, and look forward to seeing you back at Marymount.